Hi everyone and welcome back, and yes, this time we are doing CompTIA Security Plus for free, just like before. And I'm really excited for this training specifically because I've put in just so much effort into developing it, and it's an awesome learning opportunity as well. I mean, there's just so much content to cover here, so many interesting things that we're going to be talking about, so many related fields with security, with cybersecurity that you might not even think about right now. It's going to be an awesome journey. I can promise you this from the very beginning. Now, Security Plus is also one of the most requested security trainings out there, so that's another reason why we're doing this. And it's also one of the most requested ones because it's the exam or the certification or the learning path that it's perfect for anyone who wants to become a better security professional, or actually for anyone who wants to become a security professional, because even though it's introductory, it doesn't take you from zero to hero. It still covers so much content that it doesn't really matter if you're a developer, if you work as a sysadmin, if you work in networking and security, if you work with cloud environments or with mobile devices. It doesn't matter. You're going to find something useful and some security concepts that apply to your very job role right in this training. So again, I'm really confident that this content is going to be useful to you, especially nowadays because security is everywhere. And as I used to say in pretty much every training, security is going to be there, and there's going to be a need for security right up until the end of the world, perhaps, right? Especially if it's a cyber war or something. But I just cannot imagine a future without information, without information security, without computers, without the need to protect data. So if you're just starting in security in this wonderful domain, you're not going to be left without a job in your lifetime or even your grandchildren's lifetimes. So I'm not going to bore you with any introductory details. Let's get straight to the point. First things first, compared to our previous video series, my previous video series, I'm still a one-man show here at Certified Breakfast, but compared to our previous training on CySA Plus, a couple of things will change and a couple of things will stay the same. First of all, start with the good news and the things that will stay the same. The most important one, probably, it's still going to be free. Free as in free beer, right? Not as in free speech, as in free beer. Google the difference if you need to. But there's not going to be any hidden costs, no paywall content, nothing actually that requires you to pay something to access this content. Of course, if you feel that you have gained something useful, if it helped you move forward in your career, in your studies, if it helped you get certification, but if you want to contribute, as little as a coffee, perhaps, there are some links in each video description just to motivate me to keep doing this, and perhaps even, I don't know, pay for coffee. Why not? And I know I've said this before, but I'm doing this for free because I've been through so many certification exams. I've studied ever since I can remember. And I've gathered a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of things I can tell you, a lot of stories that I can tell you. And I think that the best thing I can do with all this knowledge is not just to use it, you know, to pay the bills and or buy a house perhaps, but it would be awesome for my own, let's say, human satisfaction to know that I was able to help out people just like you, right? To move forward in their careers, to help them get a better life, and perhaps, you know, even a more interesting life, because working in cybersecurity is never going to be boring. Secondly, another thing that stays the same is the completeness of the training. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be short, but that's why I'm doing it, because other trainings out there are painfully leaving out vital content, especially for the certification, or just skimming over important details. And they don't exactly, you know, invest the necessary time and effort and provide you with enough examples to understand what's going on in there. You know, neuroscience says that you remember best when you explain something to somebody else or when you teach someone. And I also thought about wrapping this around, this idea around, as in, if you're able to explain something, especially a complex idea, to somebody else who doesn't know it, then that's proof that you understand it correctly. And I honestly, I don't feel confident to be able to explain a lot of the ideas that other video trainings out there try to explain to me. So that's why this is kind of different, right? This type of training here is a bit more thorough, but I can bet that it's not going to feel like a waste of time to you. And thirdly, another thing that's going to stay the same, and I know that you've told me this in the comments section a number of times, is the demos. We're not going to be just talking about the tools and the techniques. We're going to demonstrate them live, or at least I'm going to show you some examples or some live websites that demonstrate what we just talked about, right? Because, you know, everything works in PowerPoint, right? Or on a drawing board, but real life happens outside of PowerPoint. So why not learn how things work in real life as well? And some things will change. First of all, the speed of the content delivery will be a bit higher, and the overall structure of the videos will be more condensed, more content in fewer minutes, because time is the most precious resource that both you and I have. So why waste it on useless content? Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a short training, but I just won't be insisting so much on basic ideas. Another thing that's going to change for the better is one of the things that you've suggested over and over in the comments section, and that is we're going to map the topics that we're covering onto the actual exam objectives. You're going to find this information in each video description. Some of the videos will fully cover a specific exam objective. Some of the videos will just partially or just mention some related exam objectives, but they're both going to be mentioned right there in each video description. So you can put a check mark if you really want to put check marks next to all of the exam topics while you're preparing for the exam. I hope it's going to help you a lot. And finally, the last thing that I want to tell you about in this introduction is just a couple of things that I like and a couple of things that I don't like about the exam. And you might say here, well, Andrew, you know, I respect you. I like you as a teacher, but why do I care what you like or what you don't like? You are entitled not to care, of course. But the reason why you might care is that I've been through around 30 certification exams so far, passed 95% of them, right? At least on the first attempt. But having been through so many certification exams allows me to compare some things that work with some examples that don't really work in that exam day, right? Especially when it comes to expectations. What you're learning versus what's actually being asked of you when you're actually taking the exam. So the first thing that I like about this exam is that it's vendor agnostic. It's not focused on a specific vendor out there, because there are a lot of vendors that do security, and pretty much all the IT devices nowadays have some sort of security embedded into them, and CompTIA is vendor agnostic by itself. So it doesn't require you to know how to configure Cisco switches or how to configure checkpoint firewalls, right? Examples, of course, will have to be vendor specific because we have to work with a specific product, but you get to develop some skills that you can later on apply to any vendor out there. Another thing that I really like is, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's the journey. It's not a destination, but it's the journey that this exam allows you to take towards the certification. That is the learning journey. That is how many things you'll get to learn and play with and find out about how they work, how they should be secured, things you should watch out for in your day-to-day life, not just on your job. I mean, we're going to be talking about mobile phones, web apps, mobile applications, even cars and drones. It's not just the enterprise realm that benefits from security. It's your each and every phone and wearable device and everything that you have at your disposal that has an electronic chip in it. It does have the potential of having security implications. So the journey is an awesome one, because this exam takes you through so much stuff that you'll be learning about that you're actually going to build some confidence when it comes to talking about cybersecurity. And just to mention a couple of things that I don't like about the exam. First of all is the quality of the exam questions themselves. Now, of course, this might change in the future. It's probably changing constantly, so your mileage may vary. I took the exam around a year and a half ago. I've been through 3 CompTIA exams so far. different ones, mind you. And the quality of the questions kind of drops the lower you get in the exam complexity. As in, Network Plus was the worst, Security Plus was a bit better, CySA Plus was the best out of these three. When I say the quality of the exam questions, what I'm actually talking about is how they are designed, or how good do they manage to explain the context that requires you to provide an answer. And sometimes you get the feeling that the question has been written by somebody who knows less about security than you do. You know, there's an idea here that the more you know, the more unsure you become, the more questions you start to ask. And that's exactly what happens with cybersecurity as well. Because there are specific questions that it's obvious that they tried to simplify the context, simplify the actual question so much that it actually doesn't have enough information. And you're going to have to assume, make some assumptions about what the question author had in mind when he or she wrote that question, which is not okay for a technical exam. I mean, we're working with computers. You're asking me something that should have one specific single answer. And also, not to mention the fact that many CompTIA questions start with the, what is the best way of doing something? And they don't tell you if that best way is supposed to be the best financially optimized method, or the best technical method, or the best method that is not going to frustrate the users. No, just best. It's up to you to guess which best is it going to be. Also, on the topic of exam questions, the second complaint that I have is that sometimes they're written in bad English, or like they're coming from a bad translation, like a machine translation perhaps, like a Google Translate. I know I'm not a native English speaker, and it still painfully scratches my brain and my eyes when I see a question in an international exam that is badly written, right? And if it's just the way the question is written, it's probably not going to be a problem because you still understand what the question is trying to tell you. But there are situations where you have some tough time realizing what is the question referring to. So it's just a bit frustrating. But again, if I, as a non-native English speaker, can detect those mistakes, that's bad. I mean, somebody should review those questions. So be prepared for this. Now, all these negative traits here, all these negative parts might sound just like nitpicking to you, which is okay. I mean, you don't need a perfect score to pass. You can screw up a couple of questions and you're still going to be fine. So let's say that maybe you're not 100% prepared for the exam, but neither is CompTIA. Okay. Okay, so we're going to be following the exam blueprint, even though we're not going to be following the topics in the exact same order that they're presented in the blueprint, simply because I personally don't agree with this order. I mean, I find that there are much better ways to introduce these concepts or to reorder them so that they're going to make a lot more sense. If you disagree with me, feel free to disagree. But we're still going to be covering everything that needs to be covered, so no worries on that account. So we're going to start talking about threats, attacks, and vulnerabilities, which is one way of basically referring to the entire content of the training, right? Malware, physical attacks, password attacks. We're talking about types of attacks like privilege escalation, race conditions, buffer overflows, directory traversal, a lot of the things that you've probably heard about. Maybe you don't know exactly how they work. We're going to see how they work. Network attacks, a lot of attacks in there as well. More categories in here, including attacker categories, which is basically going to be about understanding the motivations behind an attacker, behind a hacker. The security concerns associated with vulnerabilities, especially problems that stem from bad configuration or misconfiguration, which is going to be extremely useful on your job if it's in any way related to security. We're going to talk about security assessments. We're not going to be teaching or learning how to perform a security assessment. We're going to be learning about a lot of stuff that's involved during a security assessment. Actually, we are going to be learning a bit about how to perform a security assessment, just not so thoroughly as other certifications are trying to teach you. Also, penetration testing is one of the topics that will be covered just briefly. architecture and design, or how to design your networks or buildings or your applications for security, and how to design infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about the physical infrastructure from a data center, and also about the cloud infrastructure, which is also a data center. It's just that somebody else's data center, right? Application security, very important here. We're going to talk about coding techniques, techniques to secure your application code. That's going to be really interesting here. Cybersecurity resilience, talk about redundancy, load balancing, how to make sure that your systems are resilient and they can handle an interruption in service or a disaster. Specialized systems, told you, we're going to be talking about things like drones and printers and embedded devices and 5G and whatnot. Security controls. Physical security is also an important topic, even if we're basically talking about information security in the virtual world. Well, don't forget about the physical world as well. Cryptography, not the most exciting topic, but also it's not going to be really thorough, so don't be scared. Pretty much 0 to very little math involved in here, so it's going to be more than fine to go through this cryptography topic here. Implementing security in network protocols, again, a very wide topic here, because a lot of vulnerabilities come from the way the security protocols were designed, many of them tens of years ago. Host security, that is the security of your workstation, desktop, laptop, even your mobile devices. Network design, again, coming back to securing networks. As I said, it's not the most intuitive order of ideas, of topics in here, but we're going to try to make it more intuitive. Wireless security, I don't need to tell you why wireless security is important, right? Mobile solutions, mobile devices, tablets, wearables, smartphones. A lot of things go into securing those as well. And finally, cybersecurity solutions applied to the cloud, because the cloud kind of works a bit different than your own data center or your own applications. Identity and accounts in an enterprise organization, a very important thing to manage and to keep your eyes on. Authentication and authorization solutions, how you verify the identity of your users. It might be inside of a company, it might be inside of a web app that you're using, or inside of a mobile app that you're developing. A lot of concepts apply all over the board. Public key infrastructure, we're going to talk about here about certificates, and let's see what else we have. The incident response section and methods for organizing in advance before an incident, a security incident happens, during a security incident, and of course what to do if it already happened and you need to recover from the fallout. Policies, processes, again, not the most stellar topics in here, but we have to talk about those as well. Investigation after an incident, learn what happened, make sure it doesn't happen again. Mitigating controls, what you can fix to make sure that the incident doesn't happen. And we're going to talk briefly about digital forensics, right? CSI stuff in here. And finally, governance, risk, and compliance, some procedures in here, some regulations, some ways to design security policies inside of a company so that you can be sure that you're minimizing as much of the risk as possible. Talk about methods of categorizing risks and calculating those risks. And finally, I think this is the last topic, actually. Yeah, the last topic is going to be about privacy and sensitivity of data, right? So that's pretty much what we're going to be covering in this training as well. Again, not exactly in this order, but we're going to be talking about all of these. All right, with all that being said, I really hope to see you on the next video. And actually, if I come to think of it, I would really like to see you on the last video of this series, and I really like to see a comment from you telling me if it was useful for you, if it helped you move forward in your career, in your studies, in your whatever you want to do in the security domain. All right, so good luck and let's get started.